Millionaire took his plain secretary to dinner. People think they know someone just by looking at them. But sometimes, the quietest person in the room is hiding the kind of strength that changes everything. When Daniel hired Alina, nobody noticed her. She dressed simply, neutral colors, soft shoes, hair tied back. She spoke politely without drawing attention to herself. In the office full of noise, gossip, and ego, she was like a whisper carried through a storm. Daniel was a self-made millionaire, ruthless in meetings, unbelievably calm under pressure. The kind of man who walked into a room and instantly controlled it. And yet he noticed something different about her. Not beauty, not charm, but steadiness. She organized his calendar without mistakes. She listened without interrupting. She never complained, never chased attention, never tried to impress. And slowly, quietly, she became the one person he trusted. Still, everyone else saw only the surface. Plain, nothing special, just a secretary. They laughed behind her back, never realizing that every word reached her heart like tiny cuts. She went home each night exhausted, not from work, but from pretending words didn't hurt. One evening, Daniel received an invitation to a charity dinner. Billionaires, politicians, celebrities, the kind of night where appearances mattered more than honesty. His usual partner canceled. Without thinking too much, he turned to Alina. "Come with me," he said simply. "You deserve to be there." She froze. Her in that world. She tried to refuse. She said she didn't belong. She said people would stare. She said she didn't own anything appropriate. But Daniel looked at her with a seriousness she had never seen. "Alina," he said gently, "trust me." Something inside her softened. Later that night, she stood alone in front of her mirror. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine something different, not glamorous, not perfect, just seen. She opened a box she hadn't touched in years. Inside was a simple, elegant dress her mother once saved for her. She let her hair fall freely. She added soft makeup, not to hide herself, but to honor herself. When she finished, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Not a goddess, not a queen. A woman who had lived through pain and still carried kindness. Across the city, Daniel waited by the restaurant entrance, distracted, checking his watch. He wondered if she had changed her mind. He wondered if he had asked too much of her. Then the doors opened, and silence swept through the room. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. Alina walked in calm, graceful, quietly radiant. Not loud beauty, not dramatic glamour, but a presence that felt impossible to ignore. Daniel looked up. His breath caught. For the first time since becoming rich, money didn't matter. Success didn't matter. Power didn't matter. He saw her. Not the secretary. Not the plain girl. The woman she truly was. And then, just as he was about to speak, someone from his past stepped into view, smiling with a coldness that made his chest tighten. The night was about to take a turn he never expected. The past arrives quietly. Daniel felt the air shift the moment that smile appeared. It was Lucia. Years ago, before Daniel built everything he owned, she had walked away when life got difficult, choosing comfort over loyalty. She had once told him, very gently, that love without wealth wasn't practical. And now here she was, dressed in glittering silver, moving through the room like she owned every eye that followed her. "Daniel," she said softly, as if nothing had ever happened between them. "It's been too long." Alina stood quietly at his side, unsure whether to step forward or disappear into the shadows. She could feel the tension rising through his stillness, the kind that doesn't show on the face but burns through the chest. He introduced them politely. "This is Alina. She works with me." Lucia's eyes flickered, quick, calculating, disguised behind a sweet smile. "Oh," she said, as if she had expected more. "How nice." The words were harmless on the surface, but Alina felt the sting inside them. She lowered her gaze for a moment, then lifted it again with grace. No anger, no jealousy, just quiet dignity. Throughout the evening, the room filled with laughter, conversations about money, charity speeches, and subtle competition. People greeted Daniel warmly because of what he represented: success, status, opportunity. Few bothered greeting Alina at all. Some looked at her with curiosity, others with judgment, a few with open dismissal. Yet she didn't shrink. She listened, she observed, she spoke gently when spoken to. Daniel noticed the way she carried herself, never forcing her presence, never begging to belong. He admired that. Lucia stayed close, floating between tables, finding reasons to brush against Daniel's world again. At one point, she leaned closer and whispered, "You could do better than this." Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't defend Alina loudly. He didn't make a scene. Instead, his voice turned firm, the voice he used when he meant every word. "You're wrong," he said. "She's better than most people here." Lucia blinked, surprised. Alina heard it. Not the praise, not the compliment, but the honesty. Her heart softened, though a quiet sadness settled beneath it, because she knew something Daniel didn't. She wasn't staying in his world forever. As the dinner continued, the speeches grew emotional. Stories about lives changed, children helped, families supported. Alina watched quietly, her eyes shimmering with a hidden memory, something painful, something she never talked about. Daniel noticed. When the applause ended, he leaned closer. "You okay?" She nodded, but the nod wasn't true. It was the nod of someone used to carrying burdens alone. Later, while people moved toward dessert and casual conversation, Alina stepped out onto the balcony for fresh air. The city lights shimmered below, stretching like endless constellations. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, to simply exist. Footsteps approached behind her. Lucia's perfume drifted in the wind. "You don't belong here," Lucia said softly, smiling as if offering advice instead of cruelty. "Men like Daniel need someone who understands this life." Alina turned slowly. Her voice was calm, kind, steady. "Men like Daniel," she said, "need someone who understands him, not his money." Lucia's smile vanished. But Alina didn't stay to argue. She walked back inside with quiet dignity, leaving Lucia standing alone in a storm she created for herself. When Alina returned, Daniel looked relieved to see her. They shared a quiet glance, not romantic, not dramatic, just deep understanding. The night should have ended peacefully. But then, as they prepared to leave, the event coordinator rushed toward Daniel with worry in her eyes. "There's been an issue with the charity funds," she said, "and your name is suddenly at the center of it." Whispers began to ripple through the room. Eyes turned. Accusations hung in the air like smoke. Daniel felt the world tilt. Alina saw the shock in his face and something else. Fear, not for himself, but for the truth, because someone had just tried to destroy him. And the person responsible was closer than anyone realized. When the room turns cold, the room didn't explode with noise. It went silent. That was worse. Silence meant judgment had already begun. People who had shaken Daniel's hand minutes earlier now stepped back, whispering behind napkins, pretending not to stare as the event coordinator tried to explain. "There's a transfer we can't trace," she said quietly. "A huge amount disappeared, and the system shows your approval." Daniel felt the words land like stones inside his chest. "I never touched the account," he said calmly. "Show me." They walked toward a side office. Screens glowed, numbers flashed, documents scrolled. And there it was, his digital signature, stamped across a transaction that moved charity money into a private shell company. Except Daniel knew that company. He had shut it down years ago. Someone had resurrected it. Someone who knew him, his history, his systems, his passwords from another lifetime. Alina stood behind him, watching every detail carefully. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't crying. She was thinking deeply, calmly, like someone used to solving problems nobody else noticed. Lucia appeared at the door, pretending concern. "This is unfortunate," she said softly. "These things ruin reputations." Daniel ignored her. He traced each digital trail, hand steady over the mouse. Every link looked legitimate. Every approval looked real. Whoever did this had studied him carefully. The coordinator spoke again. "We have to announce an investigation. Until then, our sponsors want distance." Distance, a gentle word for isolation. Daniel nodded once. He didn't beg, he didn't fight. Years of struggle had taught him something. Truth does not need shouting, but the humiliation stung anyway. As they stepped out of the office, conversations stopped again. Faces turned, some full of sympathy, others quietly satisfied. Elena walked beside him, not behind, not apart. Beside. In the parking area outside, night wind brushed softly across the pavement. Daniel leaned against the car for a moment, breathing slowly. He hated the feeling, not of losing money, of being misunderstood. Elena finally spoke. Who else knew about that old company? Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "One person," he said, "and I trusted her." Elena already knew the answer. The realization settled like a faint ache beneath her ribs. "Lucia." He didn't nod, he didn't accuse. He just stared at the city, as if seeing the past replay across the buildings. "I gave her everything once," he said quietly. "I let her close, too close." Elena listened, not to the words, but to the pain beneath them. "People change," she said softly. Daniel gave a sad, almost tired smile. "Some don't." They drove back toward the city. Streetlights stretched like golden rivers through the darkness. Inside the car, silence wasn't heavy, it was thoughtful. Elena watched him with a quiet respect. This wasn't the powerful businessman everyone admired. This was a man standing in front of his past mistakes, refusing to collapse. That was strength. When they reached her apartment, she hesitated before stepping out. "If you want," she said gently, "I can come to the office tomorrow, earlier than usual. We'll go through everything together." He looked at her for a long moment. "You don't have to." "I know," she replied, "but you're not alone." Those words landed deeper than she realized. After she went inside, Elena leaned back against her door, heart mixed with warmth and worry. She had always stayed quiet in life, always stayed invisible. But tonight, she had stepped closer to a world that could burn anyone too close. And she also knew something else. She recognized the software used in the fraud. She had seen it before. In another job. In another life she never talked about. A life that had almost destroyed her. She walked slowly to her small desk, opened her laptop, and began searching. Lines of code, systems, patterns, memories she didn't want to revisit returned, but she didn't stop. Because this time, someone good had been targeted. And she refused to stay silent. Across the city, Lucia stood on a balcony, phone pressed to her ear. "It's done," she said quietly. "Next step." A voice on the other end replied, calm, confident, invisible. Lucia listened. And then, somewhere in the darkness, a plan tightened around Daniel's future like a closing hand. He had no idea yet. But Elena was about to walk straight into the storm. The truth leaves footprints. Morning arrived quietly. No storms. No loud drama. Just the kind of stillness that feels dangerous because you know something is coming. Daniel walked into the office earlier than anyone, eyes tired but steady. The news had already begun spreading. Messages, emails, subtle questions disguised as concern. He ignored all of it. He sat at his desk, opened his laptop, and started reviewing logs again. Every move he made was careful, patient, determined. He was not fighting for his reputation. He was fighting for truth. A soft knock came at the door. Elena stepped in with coffee, simple, warm, steady. She placed it gently beside his notebook and sat across from him, not speaking yet. They worked side by side. Screens open, documents layered, digital trails stretching backward. And then Alina saw it. A pattern, not in the money, but in the timing. Every transfer had been made at moments Daniel was physically somewhere else, speaking publicly, on flights, in meetings. Whoever did this wanted it to look believable but not traceable. She leaned forward. "Look here," she said quietly. He followed her cursor. Lines of data, repeated intervals, cloned access signatures. Daniel frowned. "This is an old encryption key," he said slowly. "Nobody should still have this." Alina's heart tightened. Because she knew who could. She opened another screen, fingers moving carefully. She was fast but not reckless. She layered proxies, firewalls, protection. Daniel watched her, surprised but trusting. "You've done this before," he said softly. A shadow crossed her eyes. "Another job," she replied. "I helped investigate financial fraud for a corporate firm. Things went bad. Someone powerful didn't like me asking questions." He wanted to ask more, but he didn't. He simply nodded, as if telling her, "I hear you, I respect you, no pressure." Then something clicked. A ghost account. Buried. Hidden behind fake charities. Alina opened it. And there, in transaction logs, appeared a familiar name. Lucia. Not directly. Not openly. But tied to someone else, a consulting firm under her cousin's signature. A small link, easy to miss. Daniel leaned back slowly. It didn't hurt the way betrayal usually hurts. It felt tired, like recognizing an old wound reopening. "Why?" he whispered. Alina thought for a moment. "Not love, not jealousy," she said quietly. "Control. Some people can't stand losing their place in someone else's life. They don't want you happy without them." Silence lingered between them, not romantic but deeply human. Suddenly, the office door opened. Lucia walked in. Elegant. Calm. Too confident. "I heard you're under investigation," she said softly. "I wanted to check on you." Her eyes flickered to Alina, then to the laptop. Too quickly. Alina closed the screen. Daniel studied Lucia carefully, his voice gentle, almost kind. "Did you come because you care, or because you're afraid the truth will point somewhere close to you?" Lucia laughed lightly. "That's insulting, Daniel." But something in her expression faltered. For a second, fear cracked through the mask. Then she recovered. "I only want to help," she added, turning toward the window as if bored. "If you need a lawyer or connections, I know people who can." "Like the consulting firm registered under your cousin?" Alina asked softly. Lucia froze. Just a breath. Just a heartbeat. But Daniel saw it. Very slowly, Lucia turned back. Her smile had thinned. "You have no idea what you're talking about." Alina didn't argue, she didn't accuse. She simply looked at her, calm, grounded, unshaken. "Some mistakes," Alina said gently, "don't ruin people, they reveal them." The sentence landed like truth often does, quiet, heavy, impossible to outrun. Lucia's eyes sharpened. She recovered her charm and stepped closer to Daniel, ignoring Alina completely. "Be careful who you trust," she whispered. "Not everyone near you wants your good." Then she walked out, heels echoing down the hall, but her calm was gone. She was rattled. As the door closed, Daniel exhaled slowly. "You just made yourself a target," he said softly. Alina smiled faintly. "I've been a target before." He stared at her, realizing he barely knew her story, yet somehow trusted her more than anyone he had ever let close. Before they could continue, Daniel's phone vibrated. "Unknown number." He answered. A male voice spoke quietly, confident, detached. "Stop digging." Daniel didn't reply. The voice continued. We don't want the girl involved. She's not part of this. Walk away, Daniel. Sign the agreement we'll send. Accept the blame publicly. Your companies will survive. Your future will stay intact. The line went quiet. Then the voice added, colder, sharper, final. Keep Alina out, or she will pay for your stubbornness. The call ended. Daniel lowered the phone slowly. Alina watched his face. His expression changed, not fear, not panic. Something deeper. A decision forming. Because for the first time, the war wasn't about money. It was about protecting someone who had never asked for protection. He turned toward her. Alina, he said quietly, whatever happens next, it won't be simple. And she answered with the same quiet strength she always carried. I'm not running. But somewhere deep inside, a chill moved through her chest. Because she finally understood. This wasn't just fraud. It was a trap. And someone had already decided who was supposed to fall into it. Lines you do cross. The threat didn't echo. It lingered. Like smoke. Daniel set the phone on the desk, fingers still, eyes distant. For the first time, Alina saw something in him she hadn't seen before, not fear, but restraint. A man who had survived too much to panic, yet cared too much to stay calm. He spoke softly. They won't come for my company first. They'll come for anyone they think I care about. Alina stayed quiet. Not frozen. Not trembling. Just steady. I've faced worse, she said gently. He shook his head. Not like this. He stood and walked toward the window. Cars moved below like tiny beads of light. The city looked peaceful, but beneath it ran quiet wars nobody ever saw. He remembered something his father once said. Power isn't in what you control. It's in what you're willing to lose. Daniel was willing to lose money. Status. Comfort. But not someone innocent. Not again. He turned back to Alina. I want you to take a few days off. Stay away from the office. Change your routine, go somewhere quiet. I'll handle the rest. Her voice was calm but firm. No. He blinked. Alina. She stepped closer, not intimidated by his authority, not impressed by his wealth, not frightened by the storm around them. If I walk away now, I become part of the lie, she said softly, and I have spent too many years trying not to live inside lies. Something inside Daniel softened. This wasn't stubbornness. This was conviction. Then promise me one thing, he said. You won't act alone. She almost smiled. I don't like promises I can't keep. Before he could answer, the office door opened again. Security. Sir, the head guard said quietly, someone tried to access the building under your name. They failed, they left, but they knew the old codes. Old codes. Past ghosts. Lucia. But Daniel knew she wasn't working alone. She wasn't skilled enough. She was the face people saw, not the hands that built traps. Alina moved to the security console. Can we see camera footage? Within minutes, grainy black and white screens flickered. A man. Baseball cap, casual jacket, confident walk. He never faced the camera directly. Every move was measured, planned, expert. Alina leaned closer. Her heart froze. She knew that walk. A memory burned through her. Another office, another city, another life. A supervisor who smiled too kindly, who taught her code, who warned her about breaking rules. And who later framed her when she discovered his schemes. His name shivered through her mind. Marcos. She stepped back slowly. Daniel noticed. You know him. Her voice came out quiet. Yes. And then, for the first time since this began, she told the truth she had buried. I once worked for a corporate investigation firm. We exposed corruption. Marcos trained me. He said he believed in justice. But when I uncovered his side deals, he blamed everything on me. I lost my job, my reputation. Nobody believed me. I left that world. I stopped fighting. Daniel listened, not interrupting. Not doubting. Just listening. And now, she continued, pain threading through the words, he's doing the same thing to you. He uses people who want power or attention, like Lucia. And when it collapses, he disappears. Everyone else pays. Silence filled the office. Not empty silence. Heavy with truth. Daniel spoke gently. You didn't run away from justice, Elena. You ran away from being hurt again. Her eyes softened, moisture gathering, not weakness but release. Someone finally understood. He placed one hand on the desk. Then we don't fight this with fear, we fight it with proof. They spent hours gathering logs, tracing ghost connections, building a chain strong enough to break lies. Elena guided every step carefully, methodically, not reckless, not emotional, just precise. Slowly a map formed. Shell companies. Hidden transfers. Dummy accounts tied to Marcos's network. Daniel stared at the screen. This is enough to take to the authorities. Elena hesitated. Maybe, but Marcos always has one more move. He never leaves loose ends. Right then, Daniel's assistant knocked hurriedly. There's someone downstairs asking for you, she said. She says it's urgent. They exchanged a glance. Daniel's voice was steady. Who? The assistant swallowed. Lucia. He nodded. Send her up. Elena's breath deepened, not jealousy, not insecurity, awareness. They would find out what she knew. Minutes later, Lucia entered. No glitter. No bravado. Her face was pale, hands slightly trembling. I need to talk, she said quietly. Daniel didn't answer. He waited. She sat down, eyes tired, pride cracked open. I didn't know it would go this far, she whispered. I thought it was just pressure, a small push, a way to remind you you're not untouchable. They promised nobody would get hurt. Her voice broke. They lied. Elena leaned forward. Who is they? Lucia's eyes flicked toward the window, as if afraid the city itself might hear. I don't know his real name. He calls himself Marcos. He said he was cleaning the charity system, moving money temporarily, protecting investors. He said if you took the blame, it would end. Daniel's jaw tightened. He's using you. She nodded, tears finally falling. I already gave them something, she confessed. Access logs, backup codes, and your daily schedule. The room went still. Elena felt a chill move up her spine. Daniel's voice lowered. When did you give them my schedule? Lucia swallowed. This morning. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. Because everything suddenly connected. The threats. The call. The timing. Marcos wasn't just trying to ruin Daniel's name. He was planning something else. Something immediate. She opened her laptop again, hands moving fast. Daniel watched, calm but alert. What is it? Her voice was steady, but there was urgency beneath it. If Marcos has your schedule, he knows where you will be tonight. She opened the corporate calendar. A dinner meeting. Private location. Minimal security. Everything clicked into place. This isn't about reputation anymore, she whispered. It's about setting you up for something you can't escape. Daniel looked at the screen, then at her. Lucia sat trembling, realizing the gravity of what she had helped unleash. For a long second, no one moved. Then Elena lifted her eyes. We're walking into a trap, she said quietly. And we only have one chance to break it before it breaks you. What truth demands? Night arrived with quiet intensity. No thunder. No warnings. Just the calm before decisions that change everything. Daniel stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his jacket. Not because he cared about appearances, but because he needed to walk into whatever waited with dignity. Alina watched the screen at the office, tracing digital threads, monitoring signals, guiding every step from the shadows. "This is dangerous," she said softly over the phone. He smiled faintly. "So is letting fear decide who we become." He wasn't reckless. He was prepared. Two trusted security members waited nearby, unseen, blending in. Authorities had already been notified quietly with a compiled report, ready to drop the moment evidence locked into place. Still, Alina's chest felt tight. She knew Marcos. He never underestimated people. He underestimated conscience. Daniel arrived at the quiet restaurant, private room, dim lights, soft music. Everything seemed peaceful, too peaceful. Minutes passed. Then the door opened. Marcos walked in. No arrogance. No rushing. Just calm, polished confidence. He smiled like an old friend. "Daniel, I was hoping you'd be reasonable." Daniel didn't respond. He simply listened, letting silence do the work. Marcos took the seat opposite him. "This doesn't have to become dramatic," he said softly. "You sign the statement, take responsibility. In a month, you rebuild stronger. Everyone wins." Daniel studied him carefully. "Everyone?" he asked. Marcos's eyes flickered. "Most people." That was enough truth to expose everything beneath it. In the office, Alina recorded the live feed from the hidden microphone. Her fingers trembled, not with fear, but with focus. Every word mattered. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "You framed me," he said calmly. "You used Lucia, you manipulated a charity. Why?" Marcos chuckled gently. "Because power hates being questioned. You move money, governments watch you. But if you stumble publicly, they loosen the leash. You'll thank me later." There it was. Not greed. Control. He stood. "Sign, or this will destroy everything connected to you." Daniel spoke quietly. "There's something you don't understand." Marcos paused. "What?" Daniel's voice deepened, not threatening, not angry, steady. "I'm not afraid of losing things. I'm afraid of losing myself." He placed a folder on the table. Logs. Recordings. Screenshots. Timeline trails. And the moment Marcos used government-tagged encryption, evidence impossible to erase. Marcos stilled. For the first time, certainty cracked. Outside, subtle movement. Authorities entering quietly. Security closing exits. Everything unfolding silently, planned, patient, legal. Alina listened, breath held. Marcos straightened his coat. "You don't scare me." Daniel smiled softly. "I don't need to." At that moment, officers stepped in, calm, professional, firm. "Mr. Marcos, you're under investigation. Please come with us." Lucia's statement. Bank trails. Digital footprints he once believed invisible. All converged. He didn't fight. He just stared at Daniel with cold anger. "You had help." Daniel looked at him, not triumphant, not cruel. "Yes, someone brave." As Marcos was led out, the room felt lighter. Not victorious, just honest. Later, outside the restaurant, Daniel finally exhaled. The night air felt clearer, like something heavy had moved away. He called. Alina answered immediately. "It's done," he said simply. She closed her eyes in relief, quiet tears forming, not from fear but release. For once, justice had not slipped away. Days passed. Investigations cleared Daniel publicly. Articles changed. Whispering stopped. Lucia cooperated fully, owning her mistakes. She didn't escape consequences, but she began rebuilding honestly. And Alina. She walked differently. Not louder. Not arrogant. Just more present. Daniel invited her to the office balcony one evening as the sun dipped into gold. "You saved my life," he said gently. She shook her head. "No, you trusted the truth." He smiled. "Then we both saved something, each other." They didn't confess love. They didn't force a future. They simply stood in quiet companionship, two people who had walked through storms and chosen character over fear. And the world, for a rare moment, felt right. Because the plain secretary. She had never been plain. She had only been unseen. And sometimes, the greatest transformation isn't becoming a goddess. It's finally being seen for who you always were.